Of August 11th, 2014 to order. Roll call, please.
Right. Henry Quant.
Here.
Wes Ryan. Here. Chester Norikis.
Here.
Gary Ellingson. Gordon Eggleton.
Here.
Dick Anderson.
Here.
And Roger Sprague.
Here. We have an opportunity with the next item on the agenda for citizens' comments. Are there any citizens who would like to comment? Seeing none, we will go on to the next item. That's the minutes of the meeting of July 14th, and we will have them available at the next meeting. So now we're into special order of business presentations. First item is the D-Lake Underground, utility underground design. That's the update and scope change. Mr. Kurt Olson, I presume.
Let there be light.
Yeah. You just need to turn the lights back on to see the instructions. It's like it's coming into focus. Okay, so this evening we want to talk about the D-Lake Utility Undergrounding project, and then give you some updates on some of the other things that we have going. On the progress of this project, the design continues along its way. It's been a really complicated design. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. We recently had to request to move one of the major vaults that was in the area of the Kylo's property into a better location because of some conflicts and the fact that it was sort of encroaching on their parking lot, because it had to be moved because of some lines. And so they had to go in and figure out, wanted us to figure out exactly where this 18-inch water line is that goes through their parking lot. So we brought in a company called BackX that is sort of like, we have one as well, the Guzzler, that is like a big vacuum cleaner, and so it can just suck out a hole instead of getting a backhoe in there and digging it out. So they did that last week, and they were able to then identify exactly where this line was. So that helped. So there were some more emails today about, okay, well, it could go here, and so Pacific Power has to weigh in on that, and then once they weigh in on it, then all the other utilities say, oh, well, this is a problem for us, and it goes on and on. But that's what's going on. We have a tentative approval from all the property owners that we need to. Craig Kylo of Kylo's and the state parks and the Shearwater Inn. Everybody's still in agreement. There aren't any issues with that. But the project of this nature has so many different agencies and so many different utilities that it's always extremely difficult for a design team to come in at the beginning and say, okay, here's what it's going to cost in order to do it. It's the best guess at that. And we believe that ACE Engineering has done their best to accommodate all of those changes, but we're not going to be able to complete the design without some additional design fees, and there's 4 major reasons for that. There's a number of little reasons, but the 4 major reasons is that, one is that you'll remember early on in the design, I don't think I have a slide for that, no. Early on in the design, we said we were going to start here and we're going to end here, and then so they did the preliminary design for that. And then, and you remember all the different reasons. Utilities had some reasons, and there was some reasons why it just wouldn't work. And so then we had to go back, and they had to redesign starting in a different location. So that was one of them. And then once the main underground vaults were set, like I just mentioned, that conflicts were found. The power company then would do their calculations. They can only pull a wire so far. They can only pull it through so many curves, so many 90-degree curves, and then the longer it is, the fewer curves. So they have calculations that do that. And so once that happened, they realized, well, we've got to take out one of those curves. So that means that the vault has to be in a different place, or they have to put it in another vault halfway in order to be able to meet that calculation. So there was those things going on. And like I said, it seemed like every time we made a change, it impacted somebody else, and it was back to the drawing board again. And lastly, really the big one that is causing this need for additional services is the fact that so much time of the design team has been using up a lot of the current budget in order to do the design for the east side of the highways. You all know that we were going to only underground on the west side, and it was just at the 11th hour that that came through that, hey, maybe we can do the east side at a fairly reasonable price, but the additional cost of the engineering, is coming through. So it's not so much that that it's really that the current budget's really been used up in these ways, and now that we're at the end of that budget, you have a breakdown on your in your packets, I believe, of the work schedule that needs to be done in order to complete the project, and that's so the additional change order that we're talking about isn't to complete that project. It isn't to do the things on that list, really. It's to do the things that we just talked about that weren't on the list to begin with. The design's completion time is that they're doing their best to try to get the final design done and completed in September. There's a lot of issues have come up as we've gone through. The big one is just getting information back from the utilities, and we really don't have any control over that. And there were some issues, especially here at the 11th hour with the charter cable, of trying to get the information on what they needed in order to be a part of this this effort. And as you know, we went from that was one of the other issues, was we went from boring one hole to boring now about 6 holes, maybe 5 holes, because everybody kept saying, oh, I need this many conduits, and then they'd go, oh, well, no, I need an extra one, and oh, I need them 6 inches instead of 4 inches, and all of a sudden they were going to bore a 38-inch hole, and that's a big deal in anybody's book. But the fact that you have to, you don't want to, they didn't want to bore a really long bore. They wanted to start here and end here as quickly as they could, but they had to go 17 feet under the Dee River, and the Dee River is about 5 or 6 feet, under the ground, above the ground anyway. So that's you're asking them to bore a 38-inch pipe, steel pipe, in a pretty big U, and so it just got to be impractical to even consider it. So they had to go back to the drawing board again and realize, okay, well, we can bore all the 6-inch pipes. We'll do as one bore, and we'll bundle all the rest of them in one bore. So there'd be like 12 in a bundle, maybe this size. So again, we're shooting for September. It's not certain that we can meet that date. As you know, Kylos and the state parks have both agreed that it would be best for them if the boring itself took place during the holiday season between Thanksgiving and Christmas. The boring is going to be done in a large pit that's maybe about half the size of this area, maybe like this big, with the equipment being down in there. So it's going to tear up both parking lots and render them. Well, the state park will still have available to be parked in, but Kylos is going to be pretty much shut down, and I think they're planning on doing a shutdown during that period of time this year where they hadn't in the past. So let's see. With that said, though, so if this thing is completed in September, then we're not going to. There isn't any way that we're going to be able to get it bid and start the construction before that. And so, I mean, not before that, but before the holiday season. So we thought, well, if we could start some work and then during the holiday season do the bore and then finish. So at best, we would start the project with the bore and then finish in the fall of 2015. I think I have some slides of that I can.
Kurt, pardon me, what's going to be finished by September?
The design.
Design,
The
okay.
design. We hope the design is done by then. Let's see. So with that said, though, I wanted to throw it out there that it may not happen. We may not meet that schedule. There's a very good possibility, and perhaps it may be a 60% chance we won't be able to meet that schedule. Once the design is completed, then there's the final review that our office has to do, Public Works has to do. Each of the utility companies get their shot at it. If there's any changes, then those changes have to be made. And then we can start, at that point, after all that's done, then we can start trying to secure some of the We need an ODOT right-of-way permit, we need a Public Works right-of-way permit, we need state parks permit and an easement, and we can't do that until we have the plans. We need a Division of State Lands permit, we need an easement from them, we need utility easements from Shearwater and from Kylo's, and again, we don't have that until we know what the plan is finalized. And then we need a temporary construction easement from a whole list of property owners. So we'll keep you posted. We don't know if it's going to happen. And if it doesn't, then it just may push this project back to where we start in the fall of 2015, hit that window for the holiday season. And it's actually, it's starting to look that way, and I wanted to give you a heads up on that now. We're still moving it forward quickly, but this is such a huge project, you don't want to go into it until all the I's are dotted. So, but back to the issue at hand. Following any questions that you have and any discussion that you want to have, our recommendation is that we approve this as a follow-on services. The city attorney has said that was the best way to move forward with this change, and that follow-on services contract would be for not to exceed $35,509, and it would be on our contract with HHPR. And you'll remember that the reason it's with HHPR and not ACE Engineering is that the two firms have merged, and they're merged under the name of HHPR. So I think that's my comments on that, and I'd be willing to answer any questions and hear any discussion, and then a motion to approve would be much appreciated.
I have a question about the time again. We could bore in the holiday season this year, but then what would be the next activity following that? I thought I heard you say the fall of 15.
Well, if we bored during that holiday season, then we would do the rest of the work after the first of the year. So it would be maybe I did say that, but what I meant to say was in January of 2015.
Okay.
But yeah, that would just continue on. There isn't as much work that gets done during that Christmas season anyway, between Christmas and New Year's. But right after the New Year's, then they would just continue with the trenching and all the other work and move right into spring.
So what would be, if everything fell into place, what would be the final or the completion date?
Yeah, probably it would be spring of 2015.
Okay.
Which I think isn't spring's, we think of spring as in March, but I think spring is like a little later than that, but yeah, in that time period.
Then one other question, that is that with the moving of CenturyLink's stuff off the east side.
Yeah, charter.
That's charter?
Yeah,
Well,
charter.
I thought the memo said CenturyLink. Okay.
Well, it may, but I believe it's charter cable.
Okay.
It's on that side.
By moving that to go underground, does that mean that those poles then are sheared off and are no longer there?
Correct. We're trying to, we don't have that information about which poles, where they would plan to start and end their project, but we assume it'll be similar, that they're going to cross, they're going to have to cross the highway at some point by the D Lake School, and then go back across the highway again past Ebb Street. But yeah, all those poles would be gone. We wouldn't have to put in the self-supporting poles that we were talking about. So the only thing you would see on that side is the new mast arms for the traffic signal.
All right. Other questions from the panel?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Anderson.
Kurt, I remember from long ago when we were first starting this, the house on the north of Shearwater, right on the corner, the garage is down on the street level and the house up above, raised a question or concern about the vault or ending box near them. Is that still an issue for them, or has been the box or termination ended somewhere else where?
Yeah, so that box is the one that I was just talking about with the 18. It'll now be in the Kylo's parking lot. But what will happen, though, is there'll be a new power pole placed there by their garage.
Okay.
But it'll be in the public right-of-way. But that will be the thing that will affect.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Mr. Nurayakis.
Kurt, in your memo, in scope of work, you mentioned that CenturyLink expressed the willingness to look at cost sharing.
Again, maybe that's, okay, so that's probably some of the confusion. It is charter, it's not CenturyLink. And the cost sharing would be just in as all the rest of the utilities have done. There are some of the utilities where we can pass on the cost to them, and some of them that we have to pay the full. It depends on the franchise agreement. And I can't tell you exactly right now which ones are which.
I think I can.
Okay.
We have to pay the cost of Northwest Natural if there is any relocations that we require, but it doesn't involve this project. Pacific Power, we pay all their cost, and CenturyLink, we pay all their cost. Charter is responsible under the franchise to relocate their own. When we underground a project, if they're on poles, they have to pay for that relocation. So if we put conduit in or something that they're going to use, my assumption is they have to pay us.
And I'm completely wrong. It is CenturyLink. I'm sorry. It is CenturyLink and not Charter. And that was confusing me because I was thinking, well, now, it seems like Charter had to pay these costs and CenturyLink didn't. So I'm sorry for the confusion.
Well, Kurt, there's going to be a change in between Charter and of CenturyLink because of their swapping of 15 million customers or whatever that is.
Comcast.
Oh, that's Comcast. Okay, I was thinking that was CenturyLink. Okay. So,
I'm really confused.
well, Charter will be undergrounding as well.
Yes. Yes.
And so, is the fact that this swap will take place have any bearing on whether or not Comcast is willing to pay those costs, or is that all done by Charter ahead of time? Do we know?
Well, Comcast is presumably assuming the franchise agreement that we currently have with Charter, so the provisions won't change.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure we didn't find ourselves down towards the end of this thing, and then all of a sudden one of the, either Charter or Comcast bails on us. No, I think they're hooked in pretty good. Okay.
The other two, the difficulty with CenturyLink and Pacific Power is we're paying actual cost, and we won't know what actual cost is until they're done with the project. And because they keep track of their labor every hour and so on. And it can be a real moving target.
Okay.
And as a result, we don't know what savings we might achieve via this cost savings proposal?
You don't know what we're going to end up paying those two utilities. We can only estimate that.
Is it, are you surprised that they're willing to cost share? Is that why you commented on it? What's the significance of?
Well, the only one that I think you're talking about is Charter, right?
No, it says CenturyLink expressed a willingness to look at cost sharing.
Well, don't hold your breath on that.
Sure. If you have some.
I mean, they may have expressed that.
Sorry about that. That was early in our conversations before we decided to do the east side, and they were talking about how, Kurt mentioned there wouldn't be a need for the self-supporting poles that they would need to remain on the east side. So that would be just a conversation about, in general, the cost of leaving that utility on the east side versus not leaving it on the east side. That was my comment about cost sharing would be, it would just create a different financial picture. So I don't know what they're responsible to pay and what we're responsible to pay. As Mr. Hawker mentioned, different utilities have different requirements, but they brought that up as part of the conversation to look at for the overall approach of whether or not to underground on the east side.
And do we expect to save any money as a result of this, their willingness or maybe not willingness to cost share?
Well, we're going to save money by the undergrounding of the east side, actually, because of the cost that we would have occurred by having to put in all those self-supporting poles. And so there would have been a tremendous amount of work, even if we didn't underground the east side. So I believe in our one of our last meetings, we had that broke down as to what, well, that was what, there was some cost in there that we would have had to occur even if we weren't going to underground on that side, which made it, I think I just said there was some savings. There are savings in the overall picture, but we will pay more for the project.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, the staff is asking for, I believe it's about a $40,000 increase. Am I right on that engineering contract?
Yeah, if we could, if at your pleasure, would be a follow-up on follow-on services, a change of $35,509 to HHPR.
I would entertain a motion to go ahead. It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Let's have a roll call, please.
Eggleton? Norikis?
No.
Quant?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
And Sprague.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay.
Next on the list, then, these are updates, and I'll run through them fairly quickly, but there was a mistake made on my part as well. It's two tonight, huh? And that we were kind of ended up being blindsided by the ODOT permit for working in the public right-of-way. It was always my understanding, and with the project that's going on, is that ODOT, that there were one lane in each direction needed to be maintained at all times. Well, that was through the July-September period, and that we believe that we could accommodate that through this project. However, when we got our permit, the permit said that there could be no lane closures, and since there are 5 lanes there, we couldn't close any of the 5 lanes. We couldn't just close one lane and maintain a lane in each direction. So that changed the complexion of the entire project and they're requiring much of the work to be done as night work. So with all the work going on Highway 1 right now, it's probably a blessing in disguise, but it does come at an additional cost. And we're currently working out the details of what that cost is going to be without delaying the project at all. We want the project to move forward, but it's going to move forward at night. And there will be an additional cost, and we'll get you those details as soon as we can work out that. But I wanted to give you a heads up that that's going on. Schedule-wise, they're starting tomorrow. They're going to be digging the footings for the poles and the arms. Those footings are about 17 feet deep, and so there's always a question of what they're going to hit when they get down too far, what the sand's going to be liquid or not. But we're going to have all the troops here for at least the first dig to make sure if any changes need to be made to that. It'll take about 4 or 5 days. They're going to try to do one each night, so it's possible by the end of this week they'll have all those dug and all the concrete put in. Then it has to sit for about 3 weeks, 28 days for the concrete to cure good enough to where they can put the poles on. The poles are on order. They're on their way. They'll be here at the end of the month. There'll be a little bit of work that takes place between the footings and putting the poles up, but once the poles go up, then you're going to see things move pretty fast. So that's an update on the schedule. Any questions on that project? I'd be glad to answer them. If not, the last one then is the parking lot at 35th Street. The site work is completed. The asphalt's down. The concrete's all done. The landscaping is in. We have the wooden walkway. There's a part of the sidewalk, the interior parking lot sidewalk. It's not really the public sidewalk, but just inside the parking lot. That portion of that, there was no ground there, so it has to be cantilevered with. So it's going to be made out of wood. So that work is being done. The striping needs to be done. There's a bench to be put in the final punch list. But we think that the parking lot will be available at the end of the month.
Very good.
Anything else, Kurt?
Nope, that's my
right.
comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we have no public hearings. We have no resolutions. Any agency member comments? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.